Welcome to today's episode of the Daily Coffee Pro Friends. Today on the podcast, we're answering a poignant question for 2020. Is this the year to focus on increasing your profit margins in the coffee industry? Coffee or hospitality industry at large. So what we're going to talk about today applies if you own like an Aussie style cafe, which is more like a restaurant in the States, or if you just own a coffee business. Roastery profit margins are pretty great anyway. So they don't often operate at the same kinds of profit margins as what cafes operate at, which is historically, in the last couple of decades, somewhere around 3% net profit annually. And today in the podcast, we're going to focus on two aspects of this question. We're going to focus on why we should be looking at shifting our profit margins, and we're going to take a look at how much we should be looking at focusing this shift to be heading towards. And then on the next episode of the podcast, we're going to go into the specifics of how to engineer shifting from where your profit margins are now to the number that we are going to reveal in a couple of minutes of what you should be looking at targeting your margins towards. So why is this the year that you should be looking to shift your profit margins? And obviously you've guessed by now that the answer to the question that we're posing in this episode of the podcast is yes, you should be looking at making 2020 the year that you increase your profit margins for your business in the coffee industry, specifically for cafes. Why? Well, because you'll never get an opportunity. We hope you'll never get an opportunity to use something that's affected everyone en masse the same way, which is the pandemic. We hope another pandemic doesn't show up and flatten our industry. But because every industry is affected in different ways, as well as our customers are affected, this gives you a valid reason why you should be looking at changing your profit margins this year. What should you be looking at targeting? You should be looking at going from somewhere around the 3% net profit if you're doing well to 15 to 20% is where I would like you to consider targeting your thinking with regards to your new profit margins. And you might be thinking that's crazy. It's not crazy. I promise you. We'll show you in the next episode how you can go about doing that. It is important and it is necessary for you to start engineering a profit margin that works for you, your employees, and your customers. And it is important for you to consider all the stakeholders. So this isn't kind of like an invitation for you to open slather, stick your profit margins up to an unreasonable amount and start charging your customers, $10 a latte. That's not what we're looking at here. Because remember, as the pandemic rolls on, more and more people are going to lose their jobs in every sector, and your customers are going to be affected in the sense that they may not be able to afford $10 lattes. But if we were pricing lattes at the price they should be at, if we were to take inflation and our costs that were increased over the last couple of decades, lattes should be at $10 a latte. If people can charge $10 for a beer, which takes relatively less work to make than a coffee, then we should be charging $10 for a latte. But that's a discussion for another episode. Right now, what we want to say is 2020 is the year. If you have ever wanted to increase your profit margins, this is the year to do it. And a few things you're going to need to do in order to prepare yourself, prepare your customers, prepare your employees, and prepare the business in general to do that. First of all, and this is going to sound very strange, but once you've pondered on it a minute, it will make more sense. Drop the ego. And you may be thinking, drop the ego from a I'm too great perspective. That's not what I'm talking about. Drop the ego from the sense of, are people going to know that I'm not doing well if I have my prices higher than everybody else? Just drop it. Just let it go. Your business is not going to survive if you don't take this opportunity. And whatever this is going to reveal about your business, everybody's going to get it revealed sooner or later. And if they don't step into this, they're going to end up closing. So the first thing, drop your ego. And the next thing I want to say is, if you haven't started thinking about what your customers are willing to pay, start having those conversations with them. Because the more you can prepare them and warm them to the idea that your business model is going to have to shift, the better it's going to be when it comes to them accepting that the transition is happening. When we speak about this in the next episode, we're going to be going deep into some of the analytics and some of the numbers that you have to familiarize yourself with. That leads me to the next thing that I want you to start thinking about in preparation for this. A lot of business owners are scared of the numbers. They're scared of familiarizing themselves with the numbers. 100% of the clients that I've worked with have always felt more relieved when I have helped them see how much fun the numbers can be, because it frees you from having to go on a hope and a prayer that you're doing this correctly. So whenever I've shown people how to do a cost breakdown analysis, or how to do a COGS, how to get an understanding around what their COGS are, their cost of goods, and how to get an understanding around what fixed costs are. Once I've revealed how simple it is to do that, it's a lot of work, but it's simple to do it. Once they get an insight into that, doing business becomes a lot more fun, because they can embed their decisions in fact, and it provides them with a sense of freedom. So I want you to start preparing yourself for this idea of, all right, so a lot of the decisions I've made, I've been doing based on what other people are doing. So I'm reacting to my pricing. I'm going to start taking a more proactive approach to this. And if you can do that, and you can warm yourself to the idea of that, then increasing your pricing is going to be more palatable for you. It's not going to be without fear, because when we increase our prices, we don't know how our customers are going to respond to that. But I assure you that if you can take the steps and prepare yourself, prepare your staff, prepare your employees, then you're going to sail through it. One thing about preparing your employees: making sure that your employees are involved, or at least aware of the transparency behind what you're doing. So letting them know that this is what's coming is really important. Giving them insight into how you're going to go about doing this is equally as important. And the reason it's important is because it teaches them, and it prepares them, and it warms them to the idea. Whenever you include people on your decision, not necessarily your decision-making process, but you give them transparency into how you're making decisions and why you're making decisions, they feel a part of what you're doing. Having your staff on board during this process makes it easier for you when it comes to them having to relay the information to your customers. And that's a really important part of being able to successfully execute any price increases. So in the next episode, we're going to go into some details about how you do this, and it's a lot of fun. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.